I want to start with the play that set off all of the chaos. Everything else that we will talk about, there is one play that set off all of it, and it is this steal that Alyssa Thomas made on Napheesa Collier.
Chaos completely exploded across the WNBA, right? It all started when Napheesa Collier got that scary injury, but it collided with this huge controversy that's now sitting squarely on Commissioner Cathy Engelbart's lap. What began as just a heated argument over one play late in the game, it just spiraled. It turned into a league-wide crisis, with media and fans pointing fingers not just at the refs, but at Engelbart herself. They're saying she's letting this dangerous physical play go totally unchecked.
The reason this was not called a foul is because they said it's incidental contact after the play on the ball. With that explanation, incidental contact could also be, oh, you're going up for a shot, I go to block you, I block it clean, I don't touch your arm, I don't touch your body or anything, but then I knee you in the stomach after I block it. That's also incidental contact because I jumped off of one leg and then I decided to knee you in the stomach after I blocked your shot.
So, instead of calming things down, her reaction actually just poured gasoline on the fire. Reports say she was privately furious, but publicly, she was super defensive, like a full-blown tantrum. For the players and coaches, this wasn't just about one foul or even one game. It was about a whole pattern of silence and inaction. They've seen dismissive leadership building all season, and now the big question hanging over the league is pretty simple. Can Engelbart actually get that credibility back? Or is the damage already too far gone?
And that's the biggest problem that I have with all of this is so many people are fighting the fact that Alyssa Thomas, it didn't seem like she did it on purpose. It doesn't matter. If I hear one more person say, well, she didn't do it on purpose, it doesn't matter. For the most part, you guys, fouls across the board should never be on purpose.
Now, everything really kicked off with one key moment in that Minnesota Lynx versus Phoenix Mercury game. The game was super tight, right? Napheesa Collier was driving hard, focused on the hoop. Then Alyssa Thomas swooped in, sliding across her path, trying to strip the ball. At first glance, it looked amazing. A perfectly executed defensive play, a clean strip, then a quick transition, and an easy layup for the Mercury. They were celebrating, the score changed, and for the refs, it was just business as usual. But for Collier and the Lynx, that was the start of a total nightmare. Yeah, Thomas did get her hand on the ball first, but her body's angle created a collision course. Collier was sprinting full speed in one direction, and Thomas barreled into her lane from the side. Their paths crossed at the worst possible moment. Collier's leg got tangled against Thomas's body, and instantly, her stride was broken. She just crumpled to the floor, clutching her ankle.
Alyssa Thomas is running across Fee. Fee's going this way, Alyssa Thomas is going this way. Fee is in full motion. You can even see, again, with this screenshot, the angle in which Fee's body is going. She is going full speed in one direction. She is running in one direction, and Alyssa Thomas cuts her off in that regard. The foul happens, in my opinion, after she tips the ball out.
And then the crowd just went silent. What looked like just incidental contact at full speed suddenly looked really different in slow motion. It was like one of those dangerous sequences that could totally change a player's career. But the officials? They didn't flinch at all. They called the play legal. They labeled the whole aftermath as incidental contact. Their explanation was that Thomas made a legitimate play on the ball, and whatever happened after that was just the natural chaos of basketball.
This was not ruled a foul, and I am dumbfounded by the amount of people online, even the amount of professionals online who are saying that this is no foul.
But here's the thing. That ruling left so many fans and analysts completely stunned, because for anyone watching Collier fall, it didn't look like an accident without any real consequence. It honestly looked like negligence, and that's exactly where all the frustration just boiled over. Incidental contact is supposed to apply when a defender just challenges a shot, or reaches for a loose ball, or makes a normal move without actually trying to collide. But what happens when that collision is totally unavoidable from the very beginning? Could Thomas have even gotten that steal without cutting right across Collier's stride? That question absolutely split the basketball world down the middle. Some people argued it was a brilliant defensive stop. Others saw it as reckless, dangerous, and a huge example of how inconsistent WNBA officiating has become.
I don't care if Alyssa Thomas premeditated this foul 6 months ago, or she accidentally did it and called Napheesa Collier after the game and apologized to her and told her that it was an accident. It doesn't matter when it comes to calling a foul. It truly doesn't matter. So I'm also tired of the like, well, it's not a dirty, but it doesn't matter. Napheesa Collier had nowhere to go. I don't know what the referees thought she could do when she is running full speed. Her leg is in motion and her leg gets caught on Alyssa Thomas's body because Alyssa Thomas is bullying her way through Napheesa Collier's line.
Plus, for Collier, the timing seriously could not have been worse. She's not just a star for the Lynx, you know? She's actually one of the faces of the entire league, a major MVP candidate. Her health directly impacts the credibility of the postseason, so seeing her limp off the court while the officials just shrugged off the play, it really ignited a huge wave of outrage. It wasn't just about the injury itself, it was about this much bigger picture.
The NBA referee's official account, they tweeted this. They said this is not a foul. Thomas legally gets to the ball and knocks the ball loose prior to any contact. The leg-to-leg contact is incidental once the ball is clearly loose. This was correctly judged in real time as a no call, as were the subsequent technical fouls. I'm floored by this.
What's more, if a top player like Collier isn't protected during the postseason, what does that actually say about the league's priorities? That's precisely why this play became way more than just a highlight or a missed call. It became a real flashpoint, and while fans were arguing like crazy online, the fallout was just beginning. Because if the referee's decision set everyone's tempers ablaze, then what came next? That turned the fire into a literal inferno.
What steps is the league taking to ensure like the fair and consistent calls are being made throughout like these high stake playoff games?
Yeah, I think, Christina, I smiled when you started that question because I don't think it's just this year. I think every year, everybody complains about officiating, by the way, in every sport. So, but that means people care. They care so much. And we hear the concerns from the ecosystem in our league, whether it's fans, players, coaches. We take it seriously. We understand there's frustration. Our game is constantly evolving. We just talked about the speed, talent, and physicality, and we recognize that.
Look, when the referees called that sequence incidental contact, they probably thought they were just following the rulebook. I mean, the rule itself says not all contact is a foul, and players battling for the ball are gonna bump into each other. But the controversy, it came down to one critical question. Was Alyssa Thomas's steal really unavoidable, or did her angle of attack guarantee Napheesa Collier would get taken out? That difference separates a routine hustle play from a dangerous moment that can change a whole season. Basketball fans know contact happens. Screens, drives, fast breaks, they all have collision risks. But referees are supposed to judge if a player could have made the play without endangering their opponent. Here, Thomas reached cleanly, but her body's momentum cut directly across Collier's stride. Collier wasn't standing still, she was in a full sprint. Once her leg clipped Thomas's torso, she had nowhere to go. The fall wasn't just incidental, it was practically built into the play's trajectory. This is where the spirit of the rule comes in. If a defender can't make a play without crashing into an offensive player, then it's not incidental by definition. Fans kept pointing this out online, comparing it to a block where a defender gets the ball clean, but then lands with a knee to the shooter's chest. The ball might be touched legally, but the aftermath is still illegal because of reckless positioning. Intent doesn't excuse the outcome, especially with injuries. What infuriated so many was how fast the league dismissed these concerns. In slow motion, you could see Collier's body bend unnaturally as she hit the floor. Analysts replayed the clip frame by frame, showing her ankle twisting from the entanglement. For a player like Collier, someone essential not just to her team, but to the league's star power, this wasn't a small oversight. It was a glaring example of what happens when officiating ignores player safety. And then came the perception problem. People asked on social media, what if this happened to an NBA superstar? Would they call it incidental if it was LeBron James, Steph Curry, or Luka Doncic sprawled on the court? Would refs just explain away their injuries as part of the game? The overwhelming belief was absolutely not. That comparison just deepened the sense of unfairness in how the WNBA enforces its rules. This wasn't just about Thomas or Collier, it was about the standard the league wants to uphold. Should rules bend to justify missed calls, or should they protect the stars who carry the game? That's why the outrage kept building. While fans debated, the next development pushed this from a rule book discussion to a full-blown spectacle. And get this, once the NBA referee's official account weighed in, the conversation just exploded. If the play itself had divided fans, this firestorm reached a whole new level when that account decided to comment. In a rare move, they publicly defended the call. They declared Alyssa Thomas's steal was clean, the ball legally dislodged, and any contact afterward was incidental. To the refs, this was an open and shut case, not even worth a whistle, but to the wider basketball community, that statement landed like a grenade. The frustration wasn't just about what they said, but how they said it. By confidently saying the no call was correct, the league's own officiating body basically told players, coaches, and fans that their eyes were lying. People saw Collier's ankle buckle, her body collapse in pain, yet the ruling implied none of that mattered because the ball was touched first. It felt dismissive. Worse, it felt like the refs were hiding behind technicalities instead of addressing player safety. This is where perception mattered most. The statement immediately brought up that question again. Would this explanation apply if the injured player was a global NBA superstar? If Steph Curry twisted his ankle after being undercut on a fast break, would fans be told it was incidental? If LeBron James was bulldozed out of his lane after a clean strip, would the league stand by a no call? The consensus among fans and media was clear. The rules would be enforced differently for bigger names, higher stakes, and if the league couldn't afford to lose its stars, that double standard fueled the outrage even further. It also exposed the fragile relationship between referees and their credibility. Fans are used to controversial calls, but when an official account takes sides so firmly, it becomes a PR nightmare. Instead of calming the storm, the refs added fuel to the fire. Every replay online suddenly had a new caption. The referees think this isn't a foul. That tweet hardened positions, pushed players and coaches to speak out, and made fans feel the system was rigged to protect officials, not players. The timing only made it worse. This wasn't a meaningless regular season game, it was the postseason, with championship implications. One of the league's brightest stars just went down, and instead of empathy, the response was to validate the call that had so many outrage. For many, it symbolized everything wrong with WNBA officiating this season. Inconsistency, defensiveness, and no accountability. On top of that, one coach was absolutely not letting this moment slide. Her response actually turned the simmering anger into a spectacle nobody could ignore, because the refs might have defended their call, but Cheryl Reeve was not staying silent. Her eruption on the sideline took the controversy to a whole new level. Listen, when the referees really doubled down on their no call, Minnesota Lynx head coach Cheryl Reeve just hit her breaking point. This wasn't some calm complaint or a routine argument about a whistle. No, this was an eruption that instantly became one of the most talked about moments of the WNBA season, as Alyssa Thomas ran in for that layup. Reeve turned all her fury straight at the officials. She stormed up the sideline with this incredible intensity. Even seasoned viewers were stunned. She wasn't just angry, she was relentless. Chasing down refs, pointing furiously, making it super clear she saw that missed foul as an outright injustice. Players and assistants scrambled to step in. Natasha Heidemann tried to hold her back. Teammates got between Reeve and the officials. Even opposing players watched in shock as this usually composed coach completely lost it. There was one moment that really stood out. Dorka Jihaz grabbed a towel and tried to shield Reeve's mouth from the cameras. She was worried that all the cursing would just lead to harsher punishment. That image of a coach being physically restrained by her own team was dramatic enough, but it totally symbolized the boiling frustration that had been building all season long. Reeve's meltdown wasn't just about Collier's injury or that one controversial play. It was the peak of months of tension. Coaches across the league had been vocal about officiating inconsistencies. Players had spoken up about how physical games had become, and fans were just tired of seeing stars go down without what they felt was adequate protection from the refs. Reeve's sideline explosion became this visual representation of all that bottled up anger. The referees, of course, had no choice but to eject her. But even as security escorted her out, Reeve didn't back down one bit. She turned her frustration to the crowd, shouting heated words with fans on her way out of the arena. Cameras caught her yelling profanities, her voice just cutting through all the chaos. For many viewers, this was absolutely shocking, a head coach completely unhinged in front of a national audience. But for others, it was cathartic. It was like Reeve was voicing the collective outrage so many felt for months. What made this outburst resonate even more? Reeve is no ordinary coach. She's one of the most respected figures in the league. A multiple-time champion, leading one of the most successful franchises in WNBA history. When someone with her track record and stature loses control like this, people have to notice. This wasn't a rookie coach looking for attention. This was a seasoned veteran demanding accountability. Still, the optics were impossible to ignore. The league now faced a major crisis. One of its star coaches had attacked referees, cursed out fans, and just refused to let the issue die. The question wasn't about whether the no call was right or wrong anymore. It was about how the league would respond to one of its most visible leaders crossing the line so publicly. And if anyone thought Reeve's fury ended when she left the court, they were totally mistaken, because the real storm came later, when she took her frustrations to the microphone in the post-game press conference. That's when she called out the league's leadership by name. The thing is, if Cheryl Reeve's sideline eruption was just the spark, her post-game press conference was truly the explosion that rocked the entire league. By the time she sat down at the podium, Reeve had already been ejected, restrained by her own players, and booed by opposing fans. Most people expected her to just cool off, or at least soften her tone for the reporters. Instead, she totally doubled down. She shifted the whole conversation from just one foul to a full-on indictment of WNBA leadership. And with cameras rolling, Reeve did not mince words. She started by warning everyone about the dangers of unchecked physicality, pointing out that when referees let defenders just bulldoze players, injuries become inevitable. She actually cited examples from all over the league. Star players missing games, skirmishes breaking out, and coaches from other teams, including Becky Hammon, feeling the exact same frustrations. She insisted this wasn't just an isolated Lynx issue. No, this was a league-wide problem that had been festering all season. Then came the line that absolutely set social media on fire. I want to call for a change of leadership at the league level when it comes to officiating. It's malpractice to have these referees working semi-final playoff games. That word malpractice was not accidental. It carried real weight. It suggested not just incompetence, but actual negligence. To Reeve, the decision-makers assigning those referees weren't just doing a poor job, they were endangering players and undermining the integrity of the postseason. Clips of her rant went viral within hours. Fans and analysts latched onto her words, replaying the moment she explicitly called out league leadership. Some praised her courage, saying it takes a coach with her history to demand accountability. Others criticized her, suggesting she crossed a line by attacking the very institution that employs her. But either way, that press conference guaranteed the spotlight would shift from the game itself to the league's handling of officiating. Reeve didn't stop there. She pointed out that Collier, one of the WNBA's biggest stars and an MVP candidate, hadn't taken a single free throw that night, even though she was constantly attacked in the paint. To Reeve, this wasn't just bad luck or human error, it was clear evidence of a systemic problem where referees just refused to protect star players. If Collier could be hacked and undercut without consequences, what did that tell other players about their safety? Her tirade also really resonated because it echoed complaints from earlier in the season. Coaches and players had been calling out officiating inconsistencies for months, but few had gone as far as Reeve in challenging league authority. By pointing the finger directly at Cathy Engelbart's administration, Reeve escalated the issue from just a referee problem to a full-blown leadership crisis. The implication was clear. The commissioner's failure to take a strong stance had trickled down into total chaos on the court, and that's exactly what made her words so explosive. This wasn't just frustration after a loss, this was a demand for systemic change. But while Reeve's presser really resonated with many, it also created a much bigger problem for Engelbart herself, because now the commissioner wasn't just facing angry fans, she was facing open rebellion from one of her most decorated coaches. Meanwhile, Cheryl Reeve's outburst might have been the loudest, but it definitely wasn't the first. Earlier in the season, Becky Hammon had already put out this stark warning about what happens when refs let the game just spiral into unchecked physicality. Hammon having coached in both the NBA and WNBA, spoke with serious authority. She made it clear that if NBA referees allowed the same kind of leeway as WNBA refs, the result wouldn't just be rough play. She said, bluntly, there would be fights every single night. In her word, they ring louder than ever now. This wasn't hyperbole either. The WNBA has always had this reputation as a gritty physical league, where defenders really push the limits of contact and officials often just swallow the whistle. That identity has actually been a big part of the league's appeal for hardcore fans who love that toughness. But when physical play starts crossing over into reckless, that line between competitive edge and outright danger gets super blurry. Hammond's warning wasn't just about optics, you know? It was about safety. And then, unfortunately, Napheesa Collier's ankle injury seemed to validate her point in the worst way possible. Players adapt to what the referees allow. If the whistle stays silent on body checks, hip bumps, and stride cuts, defenders are just gonna keep using them until someone loses their season. That's what critics argue happened in that Thomas Collier play. Thomas wasn't dirty, but she totally took advantage of a climate where aggressive defense is rarely punished, and Collier paid the price. So fans are left asking, is this really the kind of basketball the league wants to promote? What makes this issue even more pressing is the injury trend. This season, we've already seen stars sidelined because of contact-heavy plays. Every time a top player goes down, the league's credibility takes a hit. The WNBA is in the middle of this huge growth surge, drawing in new fans and tons of media attention, largely thanks to its star power. But injuries to players like Collier directly threaten that momentum. New fans tuning in don't want to see all-stars limping off the floor because of preventable collisions. They want to see the league's best competing at the highest level. Hammond's perspective also highlights a cultural difference. In the NBA, officiating has tightened up in recent years to prioritize freedom of movement and protect marquee players. That shift wasn't just about fairness, it was about protecting the league's investment in its stars. The WNBA, though, seems a bit stuck in an old mindset, where toughness is celebrated even when it undermines the quality of play. Reeves' meltdown, Hammond's earlier warning, and Collier's injury, they all point to the same conclusion. The WNBA's current officiating culture is just out of step with what the league is trying to achieve. The bigger danger isn't just losing players to injury, it's losing trust. If fans and players believe the game is unsafe or unfair, they'll stop believing in the product itself, and that's a threat no commissioner can afford to ignore. Which brings the focus squarely onto Cathy Engelbart, because in moments like this, leadership isn't about excuses or technicality, it's about taking responsibility, setting a clear standard, and proving the league values its players above everything else. So when the dust settled after Napheesa Collier's injury, all eyes truly turned to WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbart. This was her moment to show leadership, to steady the league amidst all the chaos. It was her chance to reassure fans and players that safety and fairness were non-negotiable. Instead, her response left so many feeling underwhelmed, if not totally betrayed. Engelbart's recent comments about officiating really did little to calm anyone's frustrations. In interviews, she just kept repeating the same thing: every sport complains about officiating. To her, all the backlash was simply proof that people cared. That framing might sound diplomatic, but in this context, it felt incredibly dismissive. Fans weren't just complaining about a missed travel call or a questionable block charge. They were watching an MVP candidate get carried off the floor after what they believed was preventable contact. Comparing that to generic gripes about referees in other sports felt tone deaf, almost like the commissioner didn't grasp how serious the situation really was. Her defense of the league's officiating system also rang completely hollow. Engelbart pointed out the extensive training referees undergo, the evaluation process after every game, and all the accountability structures already in place. But that just raised another uncomfortable question. If the system is so thorough, why are playoff games still plagued by inconsistency and controversy? If training is so rigorous, why did officials miss or choose to ignore a play that sidelined one of the league's brightest stars? The answers just never came. What fans and insiders wanted wasn't a reminder of procedures. They wanted urgency. They wanted Engelbart to stand in front of microphones and say, "This isn't acceptable. We're taking immediate steps to fix it." Instead, her tone suggested patience and long-term evolution. But in a league fighting to keep new fans engaged, patience doesn't sell, action does. It also didn't help that Engelbart has a track record of being cautious when boldness was actually needed. Earlier in the year, she let players wear rival league merchandise during official events, really downplaying the optics. To some, that looked like weakness. Now with Cheryl Reeve cursing out fans, challenging referees, and publicly calling for a change in leadership, Engelbart once again seemed hesitant to enforce authority. Should Reeve be fined, suspended, or both? The longer Engelbart delayed a clear response, the more it looked like she was being pushed around by her own league. This is where perception really matters. Fans don't just watch games, they follow narrative, and the current narrative paints Engelbart as soft, more worried about protecting the league's image than truly addressing the issues tearing it apart. That's a dangerous reputation for any commissioner, but especially in a league trying to prove its legitimacy to a growing audience. Now the stakes are higher than ever. Engelbart must decide whether to punish one of the league's most decorated coaches, address all these mounting officiating concerns, and restore confidence among players and fans. Anything less will just be seen as a failure of leadership. And with the finals looming, her next move could determine not just the outcome of this controversy, but the entire direction of the league itself. So, by the time the dust cleared, it was obvious this wasn't just about one game or one controversial play. Nafessa Collier's injury became this huge symbol of something larger. It's like the league is at a crossroads, where officiating, leadership, and player safety are all colliding in ways that really threaten its credibility. And now, with the WNBA Finals coming up, the fallout from this moment could totally shape how the league is remembered this season and beyond. First, there's the concern about precedent. If a play like Alyssa Thomas's strip and collision can be excused as incidental contact, what message does that send to players heading into the highest stakes series of the year? It tells defenders they can push boundaries without fear of consequences. It tells offensive stars that their health might not be fully protected. And it tells fans that even the biggest names can be taken out of games without any recourse. Once that perception sets in, it's incredibly hard to shake. Then there's the perception outside the court. The WNBA has worked tirelessly to grow its audience, attract media attention, and really showcase its stars to the wider sports world. But perception is super fragile. Highlight reels should be full of game-winning shots and championship celebration, not viral clips of coaches cursing at refs and players limping to the locker room. If new fans tune in and see chaos instead of excellence, they might not stick around. And with the league in the middle of its biggest growth wave in years, that risk cannot be ignored. And then there are the finals themselves. The postseason is supposed to be the crown jewel of the WNBA calendar, the moment where stars shine brightest and the league puts its best product on display. But if the finals are overshadowed by officiating controversies or more injuries to top players, the whole narrative shifts from triumph to turmoil. That's the nightmare scenario for Cathy Engelbart and league leadership. Instead of celebrating the sport's progress, fans would leave the season questioning its integrity. There's also a broader cultural implication. For years, the WNBA has prided itself on toughness, resilience, and physical play. But as the league grows, those values absolutely have to be balanced with accountability and safety. The NBA learned this years ago, tightening its officiating to protect stars and maximize entertainment. If the WNBA fails to adapt, it risks being defined not by its rising stars, but by the injuries and controversies that cut them down. This is why the Collier incident, Cheryl Reeve's eruption, and Engelbart's hesitant response feel so monumental. They're not just isolated moments, they're threads in a larger story about what kind of league the WNBA truly wants to be. Will it embrace change and prioritize the health of its stars, or will it cling to outdated standards that leave players vulnerable and fans disillusioned? One thing is certain, the finals won't just determine a champion, they'll also determine whether the WNBA can weather this storm, or whether the cracks exposed in this controversy widen into a full-blown crisis. And that's a battle Cathy Engelbart cannot afford to lose. And finally, what started as one late-game steal has really spiraled into a defining moment for the WNBA. The referee's dismissal, Cheryl Reeve's eruption, and Cathy Engelbart's hesitant response have all combined into a storyline that stretches far beyond just basketball. This isn't just about a foul that wasn't called. It's about the safety of stars, the credibility of officials, and the strength of league leadership at a time when every single spotlight is on women's basketball. For Engelbart, the choice is clear. Either step forward with decisive action, or allow doubt and frustration to erode the league's biggest growth moment in years. Fans don't want excuses, they want accountability. Players don't need lectures on physicality, they need protection. And as the finals approach, one truth remains: the WNBA's reputation won't be decided by who lifts the trophy, but by whether its leadership proves strong enough to protect the game.